Okay, doke. So back again, and now we're going to dismantle the internals of the timing case. So we've got the alternator here, which is the stator and the rotor. So the first thing we'll be doing will be removing the stator, these 3 bolts, and trying to pull the wire out that goes into the back of it. Hopefully get it out of the way. Then we will bend the lock tab back on the end of the rotor nut, and we'll withdraw the rotor, undo the rotor nut and take the rotor off, but we may well have to lock the engine to get that nut off, and so I'll either jam the crankshaft, or we will put a bar through the jam the end of the other end of the crankshaft, or we'll put a bar through one of the little ends on the the center little end to lock the engine that way. But because we've got the impact driver and that works so well that we won't have, hopefully won't have to lock the engine that much. We'll see how that nut comes off, and withdraw the rotor, and then we will turn our attention to the various cam gears, and we'll be removing those. The main point of note, and we'll mention this a few times, is that both the nuts on the end of the camshaft, that's the inlet camshaft, that's the exhaust camshaft, they're both left-hand thread. Okay, so actually I'm thinking we can probably lock the engine. Yeah, it's all right. I'll draw that, because we're going to lock the engine in a different way. We're not going to lock the end of the crankshaft. We're not going to put a bar through, because I've realized I've managed to get an engine pinion that I can use to lock the gears there. So when we come to lock the engine, to undo this nut, I'll explain that then, which I've not used before, but I think it'll work well. That's why I've forgotten I had this new way of locking the timing gears, but we'll come to that when we're there. Right, we've got the impact driver, 7/16 nuts. We're going to take these 3 off. Oh, life is so much easier with a cordless impact driver. And then we'll see if we can encourage the washers to come off. The special thick washers behind these at either side of the I was going to say alternator, stator. Right, okay, so then it's coming off the studs quite freely, but it's being prevented from coming off by the cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can free the cable. Now there should be a little grommet in the end, in here. You can't see it, but where the cable goes into the crankcase, there should be a little grommet. I'll see if I can dig. I don't know if there is one. There's a lot of sealant back there. I'll go off camera a minute and see if I can dig out. There's a little rubber grommet that just it's like tapered, and it jams in. So I'm just going to see how I dig that out, which will help us to pull that wire through, that cable through. I'll just see if I can do that in a minute. Okay, I've had a fish about here, and the grommet is in fact missing. It was just a load of more silicon sealant bunged in there. So I'm going to see if we can pull the stator off. You know, it often jams on these 3 studs. You have to pull it off quite evenly and feed the wire through at the same time. This cable, this wire from the stator, you have to be very careful with, because it becomes brittle with age. The mixture of the heat from the engine and sitting in oil is not good for the cable. Right, so I managed to get it off, and I'll see if I can pull the cable through. As ever, the problem being the bullets on the end. So because this it still isn't that clear, and there is oh God, what's the word? A gland. There's like a gland nut. There's a gland nut screwed in here, and which is difficult to get to until you get the timing gears off. So if I can't pull the cable out, I'll just leave this hanging until I've got the gears off. Then I can undo the gland nut and get the rest of the cable out. I'll give it a quick go now, but I'm not optimistic. Oh, there we go. Hey, just bent the bullet back so that they weren't side by side, and out it came. And that cable appears to be in good condition. Often it's not the stator that fails, it actually fractures there. The wire can break, bending that back when it don't any good, because this whole wire becomes very brittle because of the heat with an age. Right, okay, so with that off, we're now ready to bend back the tab, the locking tab, and remove the nut off the end of the rotor. And hopefully I can use my, let's have a look if I've got it. Oh, where is it? I've got it somewhere. There it is. So, I've not used this method before, but this is an old engine pinion. The pinion that sits behind this rotor, we'll see it in a minute. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get this, and let's see if this works. And that should, with any luck, sit in the there we go. And it's sitting in the teeth between the exhaust cam and the intermediate exhaust gear and the intermediate gear. And that has locked the engine, so I don't have to worry about putting bars through the con rods or anything. Make sure I don't lose my stator nuts. And yeah, that should be it. So that's an old engine pinion. So obviously the teeth are the same because it's the one that sits behind this rotor, and that is a good way. Unfortunately, expensive. So if you want to buy a new one, they're about 60 quid or something. That's the only problem with this method. But it means just lock the engine very simply, very easily. Right, so I'm going to bend this tab washer back and we'll take off the nut on the end of the rotor. Right, we've bent the tab washer back. I've set the the phaser. Yeah, sorry if you don't recognise that. You're not as old as me if you don't recognise this allusion to phasers. Phaser set to maximum. Engine pinion locking the engine, and hopefully this nut will come off. Hey. Phaser's done the job. There we go, nuts off there. I'll take this out for a bit. And yeah, and the rotor, good, is plain ball and just sliding off. Sometimes it's a bit stiff, but it's not on a tapered shaft, it's on a, let's see if I can turn this. It's on a keyed shaft, so it should come just straight off. And of course we note that that's the normal outside face of the rotor, but that's the cast-in mark, Lucas, but that's for twins. So for the triples, what they did, they simply, rather than make a new rotor, such as the British Motorcycle Industry at the time, rather than make a new one, they simply turned it round and they scratch the marks on the back for the timing for the triple, so that when we put it back on, it's always this side that faces outwards. So there are 6 marks. That's because we need 3 marks, obviously, to time a triple with points, because with points you have to time each cylinder separately. And there are 6 marks because the Triumph, they changed the crankshaft, I'm not sure when, quite early on in sort of 69, something like that. They changed the keyway on the crankshaft. I don't know why, but they did. So that means the rotor then sits in a different position for later engines. So there are 3 timing marks, which I think are A, for earlier engines, and 3 timing marks, which I think are B, for later engines. Okay, but if we have electronic ignition, we only actually use 1 mark, because with electronic ignition, once you've set 1 timing mark, one cylinder, automatically the other 2 are dead on. Okay, but that's why there are 6, because earlier engines, the rotor was in a different position for later engines. So there's 3 marks for the early ones, 3 marks for the late. Yeah, and these are strobe timing marks. There's 3, because if you've got points, you have to time each one separately. But with electronic ignition, once you time 1, the others are automatically timed. Excuse me. There we go. Good work so far. So, yeah, so then we need to remove the cam gears. So again, I'm going to use the same method of locking. So we're in left hand, but we're going left hand, so I'll lock it against the, because we're going that way this time, aren't we? Oh gee, I've got a tickly throat this morning. There. So it's a left hand thread, so we're undoing it clockwise. So I've jammed against the inlet exhaust this time. And then we need to get the socket, is it that one? Yeah, a socket on those. Now these are very thin nuts, and I know that some owners, I think Ian Strong mentioned this, what he's done is he actually ground down the end of the socket of the right size, so there's no feed-in, because of course with the sort of feed-in on the socket, you've already lost about a 1/16, 1/8 of an inch before things really start happening. So he grinds down the edge so that you get maximum grip on those nuts. So that's something I might well do at some point, because they're very thin, they're done up very tightly, and you can easily make a mess of those. Now the question is, yes, I do have reverse on the phaser. Reverse, so left hand thread, and so hopefully this will work, because these are done up very tightly as well. There we go. Left hand thread, and then the same on this. We don't move that because it's locked, because the engine's turning that way, it's locked on that cam gear. But it's left hand thread again for the exhaust. And there we go. They are marked, I don't know how well you can see this, but they are marked with an L to show that they are, I don't know if you can get that in the light, I don't know whether we can see that or not, probably not, but anyway there is an L stamped on them. Okay, not very clearly, but there is an L on the nuts. Great, okay, we got those off. So then we can now lose our lock pinion, which is fantastic. If you've got the right tools, it's so much easier. You know, the first time I did the engine, I didn't have any of those tools, and it was a nightmare. It's just so much easier if you've got the right tools. Anyway, the intermediate gear is two minds. Is held on with a circlip, so we'll undo the circlip and then the washer behind, and then the intermediate gear will just pull off. Then we will remove, I think we'll then remove the two cam gear, and then last of all we'll remove the engine pinion. That's the engine pinion that we've been using to lock the gears while we undid the nuts. And again, you need a very special tool for that one, which isn't that cheap, but is fantastic. But we'll come to that when we do it. Okay, so I'll remove the intermediate pinion and take it from there. So we're going to remove the circlip off the intermediate gear, and it's only got small holes in it, so yeah, using the small circlip extractors. And then we've got the washer. Okay, make a note. The washer goes in front of the idler, not behind it. Then off comes the idler gear, intermediate gear. And now we're left with the engine pinion and the two camshaft pinions. So now we're going to remove the two camshaft pinions. And we've got our pinion extractor, and each pinion has these two threaded holes. So I screw the small bolts into the threaded holes through the extractor. Okay, just run them on a little bit. Make sure there's enough thread in, and then screw up the extractor. Make sure that those are roughly even. There they are. And then what we do is we tighten up the central bolt on the end of the camshaft. With any luck, this will pull the pinion off the camshaft is coming. There it goes. Yeah. And so we'll remove that extractor. And the thing to note, you probably can't see it, but there's a key on the camshaft which the pinion sits on, but there are 3 keyways. Now on standard ignition timing, the keyway that the key goes in is opposite to the timing mark. So we've got inlet, and so we know that the keyway we're going to be using when we put it back on is the one that's next to the inlet marking. And there are 3 different keyways because you can adjust the timing. The valve timing, this is the engine timing as it's known sometimes, or valve timing on a Trident. So that's good. So the next one we're going to take off exactly the same, the exhaust camshaft. The only difference is the extractor comes with a little adapter which goes in the end of the camshaft, so that when we screw this on we don't damage the end of the exhaust camshaft, which of course normally will take the advance and retard mechanism. Right, well, having looked now at the camshaft pinions, etc., the marks on the pinions have been changed. So I think that this engine has already been adjusted so that the valve timing is at its optimum position, because when they made these engines they were made to like a factory standard, so that wasn't the absolute optimum valve opening position, because they didn't have time to do that. It would have taken ages to adjust them so they were absolutely spot on. So they tended to be a bit err on the side of caution, so the valves tend to open a bit later than they should, so you haven't got optimum performance. So that's why you got the 3 keyways. You can adjust them so that the valves open exactly, as near to exactly when you want them to. Anyway, but it looks like this one's already been done. So when we come to reassemble, I'll check that and see if indeed it has been done, because I've just reassembled it all with the marks as they are now, and they are way off the standard settings. So I think this has already had the timing set to optimum, which is interesting. So but when we come to reassemble, we'll go through the whole process, because I need to do it for myself really more than anything else. This of resetting the pinions so they open the valves at exactly the right time to give maximum performance. Okay, so we'll take these. I'll take these back off for now. Inlet, and that's exhaust. Now one thing I've found that was very interesting is that this here's the inlet cam spinning as it should, and here's the exhaust cam, and it's pretty, I wouldn't say lock solid, but it sure don't want to turn. Now, so there's obviously something wrong there. I'm not sure how we're going to address that, but that exhaust camshaft is very, very tight. I mean, way too tight. So whether I can get it reamed or something, we'll have a look at that. But that is definitely wrong and definitely needs sorting, especially if the engine's been running like that, because often, to be honest, if the engine runs, it can sort of sort out any tightness like that a bit. But if it's been running like that, I would like to think what it was like when it was first put in, because I can hardly turn it. Well, I can't really turn it. Right. Okay, so our last job, well, we've got to remove the stator studs, but our last job is to remove the engine pinion, and we use here this special tool, which I always refer to as the James Bond tool, because it looks like the sort of the baddie spaceship in Is It You Only Live Twice? I can't remember, where they go up into space and they sort of capture the goodie spaceship, because the jaws are open and then they close around the goodie spaceship and take it away. Dear. So what you've got is these 3 jaws, and when you tighten up the outer collet, then the jaws close. And the jaws have got sort of a lip on the end, and that lip fits behind the pinion, and we put that on, we'll tighten that up, they close in on the behind the pinion, then we do up the centre nut, and again that will draw the pinion off. Oh, must remember to remove the woodruff key first. That holds the rotor for the rotor. So this is a specialist tool, because you can't get a puller. A normal 3-legged puller will not fit behind there. You can try and like lever things off, but because of the case, you can damage the edges of the case very easily, using normal levers. You go to lever it, and what happens is you hit the edge of the casing. So these aren't cheap. I don't know, 40 quid or 50 quid, I can't remember. They go up I think mine was 25 when I bought it, but that was a few years ago. But they work, I think, on, there's various other bikes they work on as well. So worth getting one. It works on the Norton Commander as well, I think. Right, but what I was saying was, I don't know if you can see, I've still got the Woodruff key in so I need to get that out, because obviously the pinion won't get past that Woodruff key. So we'll remove the Woodruff key and then we'll put the puller on and get the engine, the crankshaft pinion off. I'm just going to try and tap this out. There, just leaving it out with a small screwdriver. And then I'll just tap it gently and see if I can finish. If I can get it out without tapping at all, so much the better. There we go. So that's your typical sort of half moon Woodruff key. Yeah, we got that. Yeah, and that sits in the crankshaft and holds the rotor in position. There, everything's in place. I get my gloves on, and then we'll do up this outer stud, bolt rather, and that should draw the engine pinion off. Gloves, belatedly as ever. Okay, coke. Stop the engine turning. Hopefully we can just do that manually. Turn up the door. Right, no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the crankshaft. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and lock the crankshaft by getting an adjustable spanner and put it on the crankshaft. It's got the splines on. And if it sits tight enough on those splines, it shouldn't turn. So it's on that end, jammed against the bench. So let's see if that works. Depends how tight we go. There, I can feel it. It just broke then. So it's pulling. That's fine. It's pulling the pinion off now. So capturing the goody spaceship. But you do really need this this pinion puller for this job. As I say, you can so easily damage all the crankcase by trying to lever it off and one thing or another. And again, with this tool, it's so easy.
Hello.
Hello.
You okay?
Videoing. Okay, it's coming off. Nearly there. Doesn't sound like a dentist. And nearly done. It's about another 5 minutes to go. Yeah, it's nearly done. Just a little bit more. How many times did I fall for that one was as a child? Anyway, never mind. And there, off it comes. Now, it's gone on very tight, so I'll have to release that. No, I'll have to put a grip on it. Right, but it's off. And then we've got, I'm trying to turn it. Right, so then we've got the Woodruff key for the that's for the pinion we just taken off. Right, so there's a spacer at the back. There it's coming off. So that is a spacer that goes behind the pinion, and that's it. I'm probably going to leave these studs in position. Obviously, you know, we're going to clean up all the lovely gunge. Well, lovely gunge that sits in the bottom of the timing case. I'll leave the studs and that in situ for now, because I don't know that we need to remove them, or the intermediate shaft, or indeed the gland. So we're now ready to split the crankcases. So when I've cleaned up a bit, then we'll be on and we'll do that. I'll leave the I'm going to leave the Woodruff key in. That is for the for that timing engine pinion. I'll certainly leave it in there for now. Don't want it to get lost, but don't want to dig it out unnecessarily. Right. So what we're going to do, last thing that I'll do before we split the crankcases is I'm going to remove the oil filter. So yeah, I'll do that now before I tidy up. That's about the last of the jobs, and then I'll tidy up. Okay, so we'll get the drive on it. We've got the drip tray. Put it back the right way. Off it comes. So we've got the cap, and then there's the spring in the cap, and then we've got the actual oil. We've got the actual oil filter, and we just need to pull that out. It's got a little like a tang on it. I don't know if you can see a little yeah. And so there it comes. That's the actual oil filter itself, which obviously we'll be replacing. Looking okay. And that's the last thing we'll do, and then we're about ready to split the crankcases.